So much misinformation and so much bro science, and doctors don't know what's going on.
Hi, welcome to Balance My Hormones video. We're here with Pete, who's got his own YouTube channel, his own sort of social media following. It's in TRT, men's health, sort of providing helpful information amongst, a lot of information or misinformation that's out there. So, hi Pete, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, I mean, my channel covers mainly TRT, but also some other men's health issues. I do some news stuff that I see pop up in the news.
Yeah.
My thought on my channel is just because there's so much misinformation out there, and a lot of doctors don't really deal with this, and that I would just, do the research, look at some of the studies, put together an overview, and just relay, as factual information as I can find, and help people out. Because this is a big problem that's happening these days. There's so many men with hormones are just out of whack, and they just
that's true.
Not a lot of good sources for information.
Yeah, I'm with you. So, why do you think so many men are on TRT these days? And there's a few sort of theories about it, sort of environmental stuff. But you got any thoughts?
I think it's a lot of stuff. I think it's a multiple of factors that are all working together. First off, we sit inside most of our days. We're not out plowing the field. We're not out hunting. We're not in nature getting exercise. Yeah. Just like right now, I'm sitting in front of a computer in a room getting no sunlight. So that's not, when we were living in the woods and stuff, that would not be normal for our bodies. I think also stress, everyone's working a lot more hours. Stress, affects the body a lot in a lot of different ways. I think a lot of the social media and always being connected to everyone and all that can play a factor, staring at screens at night. And then you've got our environment, which has tons of endocrine disruptors everywhere you look. I mean, I did a video on that, and I basically made my morning smoothie, and literally everything that I put in there was touching plastic at some point.
That's so true.
I just discovered the tea bags, the ones that you think are paper tea bags, actually have plastic in them. I put that on,
So British people are fucked.
Yeah, so I actually had some tea, like PT tips ready to go into this cup. And I said, you know what, I'm going to have a cup of coffee instead.
Yeah.
So
PG tips is, I don't know, but in the US, it's a type of tea bag here. So
9 out of 10
we're smashing
23-year-olds prefer PG tips.
Oh really? We're smashing tea all the time,
Yeah, they actually did here in Florida. The University of Gainesville did a study on a lake that had been polluted with D, which is an insecticide that we used for a while.
Yeah.
And then they have another lake that's like kind of more remote, and it's never been polluted. It's more pristine. And they actually went out and got they captured 144 alligators, and then they figured out which ones were males, and they took their blood, and the ones that were in this polluted lake had like 50% less testosterone in their bodies. Wow. And that's just, it's not a scientific study, but that's 50% is kind of a big drop.
Big drop.
I've covered myself in that stuff before. I went to Africa. The mosquitoes love ginger people, it seemed, or just me.
I think I'd risk it if I was going to Africa. I think I'd risk it.
Yeah, better than malaria, I think. But so there's a good book, isn't there? Estrogeneration.
I've not read that. I'll have to pick that up.
Yeah, so I think it's Dr. Anthony J. But he literally researches them, and it was just a really good. It's really scary, obviously, as well. But there's definitely that to it.
Because he talks about not just the endocrine disrupting chemicals, but he also, or the estrogen mimicking endocrine disruptors, but also how it disrupts your androgen receptor. So no matter how much testosterone you give yourself, they'll be blocked at the androgen receptor level, which is even scarier.
Sort of the binding.
So you're almost creating this testosterone resistance scenario.
That's wild. You can't get away from a lot of this stuff.
I know.
Plastics everywhere.
Careful as you are, you'll probably be. We all have been exposed, most likely. Unless we're living out in the Amazon somewhere.
Yeah.
You've got all the fragrances and soap, shampoos. Then you've got all the dyes and all the food and drinks.
Yeah, because apparently in personal health products and things like that, you can pretty much chuck in whatever you want into the product, and then if it gets proven that it's not suitable, they then remove it, sort of thing. So there can be a lot of things like parabens and things. I know they talk about that in the other for makeups, moisturizers, shower gels, and things that can just get into the body. And I think they found things like parabens were found in estrogen sensitive breast cancers when they were removed. You know, the biopsies were taken. I think I read that maybe in that book or somewhere else, but just shows they get into the body and they're attaching everywhere. So maybe, I suppose we're just fighting in an uphill battle, and maybe we just got to get our hormones optimized, right, just to fight against it.
Yeah, I watched, I think it was a TED Talk where the guy was talking about the endocrine disruptors, and he said, listen, he said, however many millions of women are taking birth control, that birth control ends up in our water supply, and then it's run through a plant that filters out solids and adds some, you know, fluoride, and they chlorinate it, but a lot of those female hormones are still in the water.
Yeah,
every day.
Apparently antidepressants as well, they've picked up, you know, the traces of the antipsychotic medications, antidepressants, things like that too, which makes sense, right? If you're weeing those things out, or
the harder filter. So even with the Brita filter, you might not get out get all those chemicals out of there.
Yeah,
pretty scary.
Yeah. So, what do you think about top mistakes people make on TRT protocols?
There's a lot of them. I think the number one thing is changing more than one factor at a time. I've seen a lot of people, they're like, okay, I was on 200 a week, I didn't feel good, so I dropped it to 150, I added AI, and I added HCG, and it's hard to tell, like, what now, you know, what changed that made you feel better or worse. You don't know now, because now you have 3 factors.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people try to chase numbers. You know, they say, oh, well, you know, my estrogen's 2 points higher than the range, so I definitely need to take, you know, 2 milligrams of Arimidex a week. And I think overall you should go along with what makes you feel good. You know, do you feel okay? You know, and as long as I think your hormones are, you know, not crazy one way or the other, I think if you're feeling good and your doctor feels you're okay, then I think that's the ideal way to do it.
Yeah. I think it's also being tempted to like change things yourself, right? It's just like, you know, maybe you're working with the doctor, things are going well, and then you might hear, I mean, forums are a great source of fear and anxiety, aren't they? Of, oh, I did this today and I felt like this today, and turned out that my levels weren't high enough. And then someone's like, well, my levels aren't high enough, without checking bloods, and then decide to up their dose, you know, and blindly, without the doctor's advice, and they end up in different situations because of that. I think that's important as well, not to just, you know, just to follow the doctor's advice, stick with it, and not sort of play around. I mean, it is tempting, you know, but I think I did it a little bit at the start of therapy actually, and ended up, you know, delaying me getting dialed in, you know.
Yeah, people are very tempted to tinker in all aspects of life.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think another thing is that people have the misconception that injecting testosterone is a cure-all. You know, I see a lot of these posts on Reddit and on Facebook. You know, I've been on TRT for 2 weeks now. Why is my anxiety not, you know, still there?
Yeah.
You know, why am I still having ED? You know, why don't I feel better? And listen, I've been on testosterone for almost 2 years. There's some days I wake up and I feel like trash. It just happens. You know, you don't wake up and just feel 100% every single day.
Yeah.
Some days you feel a little anxious. Some days you feel a little down. Some days you're tired. It's just the way life is. And just injecting, you know, testosterone is not going to make you wake up every day and just be a rock star 24/7.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good point. And some people think that the more testosterone they have, the more improved their sex drive will be. And it doesn't work like that either. I've heard people say, oh, you know, I would think with my testosterone being really, really high in this last test, then maybe, you know, maybe my sex drive should have been better, because my sex drive was better when it was a bit lower. And, you know, it doesn't work like that. There's this optimal sweet spot that some people have to find. And sex drive can vary depending on many things, not just the hormone levels.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, estrogen, obviously having enough estrogen is key for sex drive. I mean, in America, there's a guy, an older doctor, that was like, one of the biggest cures for like inadequate libido if you're on TRT is having multiple girlfriends. That's what this old guy was saying. But he was like, he was making the point that if you're in a long-term relationship, you know, then even that will have its times where it, you know, peaks and troughs, right? So you can't just expect to suddenly change a circumstance of, you know, living with someone and having the stresses of life alongside them and things like that, you know.
Yeah.
I think that's
And
important.
libido, I think libido, ED, and anxiety, all three of those are so multifaceted. There's so many different factors that play into that. And I think a lot of men just think that, okay, well, if I get my hormone levels right, all that stuff's going to be fixed. You could have a different type of chemical imbalance. There could be something physically going on with you. You may just not be attracted to the old lady anymore. You know, I don't know. You know, it's,
Yeah, exactly.
there's so many different factors that come into play.
Mm.
So I think having a realistic expectation that TRT should make you feel better, but isn't going to fix your life. TRT is not going to drive you to the gym. TRT is not going to make you put down the hamburger. You know, TRT, it can definitely help you, but you have to help yourself as well.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Absolutely. And you have to stick with it. And don't assume that, you know, if you just stop it, things are going to get better. Because we've seen this before. Some people may want to stop their treatment for a while, only to come back and realize that, well, actually, no, I didn't need it. But in their mind, that you get through to a certain point, you get improvements. If those improvements were to stop, then they think, okay, I can stop taking the treatment now. But they find out very quickly that those symptoms return, and sometimes it's even worse.
Yeah.
So it's important to stay the course.
Yeah, people suddenly realize, or if they reflect and go, actually, I now don't feel ill. I don't feel like I can't handle life and I can't do those things. And as soon as they remember that, or like say in rare circumstances where they go, I don't think this is working, and then they stop, and then they leave it a while, and they're like, well, actually, you know, I don't feel like, you know, I now remember how I felt prior to TRT. You know, there's that too. But also, like, you know, that's the reason why we made some videos on, you know, patient expectations, literally based on patient experience, you know, from a large patient cohort, that there are, you know, the expectation of different points where you go through varies. Being on TRT for longer periods of time can bring some of the benefits, and you know, your ED, if you've had erectile dysfunction, may start to improve at a different point to someone else, you know. So just being on that therapy for long enough is a massive part. You say the guy, you know, I'm 2 weeks in and I'm not improving. It's like, well, you know, guys at 6 weeks, 12 weeks, even 6 months sometimes, okay, I've noticed some improvement. Maybe it's more regular, but not consistent enough for their sort of mind, you know, what they expected. And that's when, I suppose, when you then understand the normal patient journey, that it's not going to be instant like that for everyone. That is for some people. It is for some people, though, right?
Well, we're a society of, you know, instant gratification. You know, if you take a Xanax, you're going to feel that in half an hour. But so people kind of expect the same thing. Well, TRT, you know, I mean, I injected it. It's got to work faster than that.
Yeah.
And it's just expectations. And I think you guys having a clinic, I'm sure you guys tell your patients, you know, what to expect. You know, you're not going to be Superman tomorrow. Yep. So I think that's good, just to know the expectation.
And that's part of our service, is to help support those patients through the journey, because it's really needed. So we're here to let them know. We've got the collective experience of all the other patients that have come through before, including ourselves, to relay that to them.
Yeah, it's just being reminded as well. You might be told it. We can all be told once that it might take 6 months, and then you get 3 months in. It's sometimes good just to chat to another patient and be like, you know, is this how long it takes? And they're like, yes, I see it. And that's sort of the reassurance you need to reduce the anxiety, you know. So what do you think about, you do subcutaneous testosterone, right?
I do.
We don't have that here. The formulations we have, we did a video about this, but the formulations we have for testosterone are single-use ampules, you know, and the oils that they are made in from the actual manufacturer aren't really friendly with subQ either. The amount of oil, because I know you can do in your multi-dose vials quite small amounts, and certain oils, I know even those smaller volume oils can be quite irritating for people in America. I've heard of that as well. But we don't really have the option to do it without patients getting in a sort of discomfort when they're doing it.
Or the risk of them using it outside of what the manufacturer recommends. So the manufacturer recommends, the glass ampules, the way the medication is provided. to be single use. So you use what's needed and discard the rest. So one, it can get costly, but two, there's no other way to really deal with the waste but to bin it. And so the volume that the manufacturers make the ampules in, like if it's Cypionate, it's at least 2 milliliters for 100 milligrams. And so if you're doing subcutaneous, you may do half that or a quarter of that dose, but still quite a large volume. It's either, 1 milliliter or even half a milliliter is quite a bit to inject into your belly fat without causing a lump or a bump or irritation. So, and if you're only injecting twice a week, I mean, I inject every third day. I just do intramuscular injections.
Yeah.
And
no, and I've done intramuscular as well. I've done, my glutes, I've done shoulders, done quads, and there's nothing wrong with intramuscular. That's been the staple since testosterone was pretty much invented. I think, just for me personally, it's just easier to do. And just tinier needle, it does take a little longer. I never go above half an ml in one spot. And from what I've seen, the sub-Q absorbs like slightly slower, but nothing crazy like night and day. So I think both work.
I think it depends on the formulation, because we had seen some of those people that we talked about that kind of go off the reservation, that start tinkering with it themselves early days. And we get reports back from those patients that trial that. One guy said, I'm using 75 milligrams of Sustanon and I'm doing it subcutaneous, and we measure his levels and there's nothing there. I don't know where it's going. There was nothing there where you'd expect for the same time period, 5 days later, that his levels should be probably around 30 nanomolar per liter, like maybe 800 nanograms per deciliter. And we were seeing a few of these patients that had tried it when they told us they were doing on the trough day, the lowest point, the day that you expect the next injection. It wasn't an adequate amount. It's almost as if they were back to hypogonadal state. So from that experience, I would say, unless we saw the pharmacodynamics, pharmacokinetics of that particular usage, I'd be a bit unsure if the doctor would want to prescribe that in that way. And in the UK, it's just not an option because we don't have the multi-dose vial in which they can pull from. And not legally allowed, and it would probably need a special import.
Yeah, even the how heavily regulated the doctors are here, using hormone therapies is sort of, it seemed more abnormal, like I said, with the healthcare service. Majority of doctors are within that, so going out of that and doing hormone therapies is almost seen as is different. And then if you're not using the preparations that are available as they are, then that doctor's also more at risk, and so is the pharmacist, to allow that to happen as well. So
absolutely.
We'll catch up.
If my livelihood was heavily regulated like that, and medicine said intramuscular only, doing intramuscular only. That's your livelihood, and you provide a good service to men all over Europe to help get them feeling better. You don't want to lose your license over that.
No, and it's one of those things that, as much as it sounds very intriguing, subcutaneous, and you think it's going to be easier, it's a smaller amount, it doesn't hurt as much. I know I joked one time, I said, just man up and do the intramuscular injection. But no, it's, if you have to prepare, whether it's subcutaneous, like you said, it takes time to draw it out with your tiny little orange all-in-one insulin syringe needles, and then you doll the end of it. That takes time, where, it's just as quick to just pop it in intramuscularly, and you're done. And the pain, it shouldn't feel any pain, but I think it's a psychological thing.
Yeah, I can see it. I know you've been on therapy 20-something years, but injecting into muscle is for some people a little bit daunting initially, right? So I could see if there are those two options. Well, I probably would have done it if it was available to start with. I see the benefit.
I suppose when I had tried it when I was in America with the Cypionate, and every so often then I would get some bruising. Which wouldn't go away, like I said, for a week or two. I said, well, sod this. This isn't fun. At least if I do an intramuscular injection, no one's going to see it. And if there is any bruising, which is very rare, then it's just better. But it's individual. But here with the patients and in the clinic, we can't really recommend that.
Yeah, of course. I think the overall theme of this video is that TRT is very personalized. There's lots of different ways to do the same thing. Different people feel differently on different stuff in different ways. I've seen a lot of people say that they feel flat on sub-Q. Their levels are still good. They just feel a little flat. I've seen people say that their total testosterone was down about 200 points. Me personally, mine stayed the same. So I think, like everything else, everyone's different.
Yeah.
Just find out what works for you, basically, I suppose.
I mean, one of the good options for those that would like to do daily injections, and I'll be potentially trialing this in future, would be daily propionate, 25 milligrams. And in the UK, that comes in what's available in 1 milliliter solution of testosterone propionate. And that could be done daily or every other day.
Yeah, I've done that before, which it was, like
yeah,
I say,
you said it was like water putting it in.
Yeah, really watery, actually.
The base, not like in the States where I think it's cottonseed oil or was it sesame oil?
Sesame, yeah.
It's olive oil, extra virgin.
That's
a little testosterone salad afterwards. Yeah.
Hey, you were telling me about that, Mike. You were telling me that you guys get testosterone cypionate with olive oil. I've never heard of olive oil.
Yeah, well, it's Italian.
I've heard HTP oil, cottonseed, rapeseed, all that stuff. I've never heard of olive oil.
No. I like to think it's probably less inflammatory than some of the things like castor oil and things, but I don't know. Maybe
or less than arachis oil, which is what Sustanon's made out to, which is extracted from peanuts, which would be like, didn't anyone know peanut allergies 40 years ago?
Yeah.
But anyway, you got different tools for different people, and there's, like we said, there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just there's certain limitations, and that's what we've been able to do here in the UK with Balance for Hormones, is try to kind of put the pieces together of this puzzle between what's the best practice that's found in America and internationally, and what's available here in the UK and Europe, and try to make the best of both work with what we've got.
Yeah, essentially, isn't it? Yeah.
Sounds like a pretty good approach. I did want to ask you guys about Sustanon. I'll tell you my history with Sustanon. I've never personally taken it. When I was growing up, I had people that were starting to hit the gym, and and they got Sustanon. And I remember my buddy was telling me, like, yo, this is the bodybuilding stuff right here. There's 4 different types of testosterone in here. And I was like, wow, that sounds crazy. Yeah. And now that I'm older and I see it, Sustanon, it's not crazy bodybuilding. It's just meant to give you stable levels. Yeah. And I guess I've seen some bad stuff on Sustanon, but it's mainly for people who are on 250 milligrams every 3 weeks. And they just say they feel horrible toward the end.
Of course.
You actually said you prefer Sustanon, but you obviously probably do a different protocol.
Yeah, it's not every 3 weeks. And, if you did testosterone cypionate or testosterone enanthate every 3 weeks, you would feel the dip as well, probably sooner than that.
Yeah.
But there are doctors that still prescribe it every 3 weeks. There are some that do well on it every 2 weeks, some every 1 week. But then you can go, just like you do with the cypionate, change the amount that you would inject. So instead of it being 250, the whole amount, you would have the doctor would prescribe it at half the amount, which makes sense, because if you look at the standard requirement, it's actually creating these super physiological levels. So the NHS would be basically prescribing Sustanon like a bodybuilder. At least your levels are that in the first few days after the injection, going as high as 100 nanomolars per liter, which would probably be like 1,600 nanograms per deciliter. And somehow that's okay, because they're going to then let you go another 2 weeks without anything, and then you're going to be deficient as hypogonadal. To me, that's just cruel, and that's wrong. So why not just split the dose, smaller amount more frequently, and then you don't have those problems.
But the thing about Sustanon is it gets a bad rep because people look at 4 esters, and then what happens is everyone says, okay, what's the half-life of these esters? And then they get the date, the number, and then they decide to plot it on a graph. And then what happens is they overlap the actual times of each of the esters, right? And they're like, oh, so day 2 I'm getting this peak, and it must be much higher because that's the propionate, and then I dip. And then the day 2 is I get this phenylpropionate, and it comes up, and then I dip. And the computer generated graph from that gives that impression. But then when you treat people with it, you know what you're doing with Sustanon. I mean, it's the most available, like in Europe, even Asia, Australia, those sorts of things. So it has been around a long time. But if you use it properly, I mean, doing things like cypionate every 3 days, you get the same sort of peak and trough levels as someone who's doing Sustanon every 5 days at 125 milligrams, 100 milligrams, those sorts of things. So, instead of having the Sustanon every 4 weeks, which is what it used to be, it was 3 or 4. Yeah. I've seen guys on it on 4 before, but then bringing this smaller and smaller, more frequent. I mean, Cypionate, as you know, it can be every 3 weeks, right? You hear a lot of guys getting the whole 200 every 3 weeks, and shortening the amounts and bringing it back is very similar in terms of how it acts and how people feel on it. And like I said, I've actually been on Cypionate and Enanthate and Propionate and Sustanon. And I was, I looked at those graphs a long time ago. I was like, I must feel different. Even the Propionate every other day, I was like, oh, that's going to be perfect. Nice certain balance of it. Didn't feel massively different, disappointed, and then just went back to what I was doing on Sustanon. So I think it gets a bad rap. I know in America it was the black market for underground. There's lots of Sustanon. It's called Sustanon, which is, like you said, it's a blend of esters and things like that. And I know the bodybuilders used to use it in sort of high amounts. So maybe that's where it gets.
But it also, we're not sure what people are talking about in America is the actual real pharmaceutical grade Sustanon. And the same thing here in Europe, where people say, oh, it doesn't work. It's because they don't have the actual pharmaceutical grade. And we've heard that from patients that, may have trialed both and say, no, the pharmaceutical grade is a lot more potent than for the milligram for milligram, what they thought was Sustanon.
Well, it's the same. When we get guys who have used black market testosterone, and it's like Cypionate, testosterone Cypionate, and then often it doesn't work. It's either underdosed or they've got something else going on in it that's caused like inflammatory markers to go through the roof. It's the same sort of representation, I think, across the. Well,
I mean, look, the proof of the pudding's in the eating, and when we see the levels of people at 5 days post or 4 days post, you can almost predict with certainty from a cohort of patients that we have that you could expect their levels at trough to be between 25 and 30, 35 at the most. So when we're talking about, these esters kind of pop in and out of existence, almost as if it's quantum physics, it really doesn't. If you're saying that when you measure the patient's testosterone level at trough and there's still a good amount there, you can't get more stable than that, could you?
Mm. So that's why I think it gets a bad rap if you just don't understand it, but because it's those graphs, it's sort of how they're plotted. Yeah.
In the US, like Sustanon's not available, as an actual prescription. It's all just black market.
Yeah.
And the reason from what I gathered, is the company Organon, who made Sustanon, and they named it, they had Sustain and Organon, so Sustanon. They tried to bring it to the United States, but all the big pharmaceutical companies that were making Cypionate and Enanthate were like,
no. Yeah.
And, they call a congressman and say, hey, we don't want this stuff approved by the FDA. Did you get that gift basket we sent you? I mean, I can't say that for sure, but,
I can imagine.
Yeah, some politics.
It's unfortunate though, because it removes tools from patients, and we can talk about this in another video. But even some other future developments, peptides, for instance, these are potential therapeutics that are available, but the cost and the bureaucracy to get some of these approved makes it very difficult for pharmaceutical companies to justify it, especially if they're off patent. So anyway, it's just kind of the way it is of the world. And
but there's Sustanon in Mexico, isn't there?
Well, yeah,
but so
it's questionable. You can't just pop over to a pharmacy and hope that it's. You have to hope that it's a real thing.
I suppose that's an issue.
I mean, when I had testosterone Cypionate available to me through the doctor's prescription, I still sought out and asked the doctor to write a prescription for Sustanon. In America, doctors can prescribe really any drug that they like, as long as there's medical evidence for it. And so my doctor did. And I was on a trip to San Diego and crossed over to Tijuana with my little rucksack, and I went to a pharmacy with my prescription, got it filled, brought it back through US Customs and declared it, because that's when I called ahead and said, what do I need to do to bring back personal medicine? So I just declared at the border. So they said, do you have anything to declare? And I put my big rucksack on the table. I said, yes, I've got some prescription medications with me. I saw what it was, and they detained me for 3 hours whilst they tried to contact my doctor, who was in another time zone in another part of the States, and finally released me. But I felt like such a criminal. So, but that's how much I like Sustanon, and even back then, to kind of risk life and limb with a US Customs to get it.
Yeah, they don't play around at the border, especially the Mexicans.
No.
They don't.
Yeah.
It's actually interesting. I had a guy comment on one of my videos. He said you can buy Sustanon 250 at Walmart in Mexico. And this is just what he said. He said it comes in a 5 ml syringe.
Oh, yeah.
That's how you buy it. I was like, I've never seen anything like that. That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a brilliant way to package it, because then you get the dose that you need, And I think there's also another version of Sustanon. I think it was Sustanon 100.
5 ml syringe.
Not 5 mil. No,
that's what you said. 5.
Oh, 5 mil.
You said 5 ml syringe, right?
No, it wouldn't be 5 ml. I've seen them before. They're like 1 ml.
All right, I thought you were saying you like that.
Yeah, you could be wrong. Or...
No. It's I've seen them before because
it's a massive dose of Sustanon.
Or in Dominican Republic and other parts of Latin America, they come in the preloaded syringes.
Yeah, I've seen that. Okay, thanks Pete for coming on and joining us. I know we'll do a few other videos. It's just about sharing some information with guys and trying to be helpful. So thanks again. Obviously you can check out Pete's YouTube channel.
YouTube channel is Test Your Levels. I want to thank you guys for talking to me as well. I do this every day, whereas I just do research and make kind of somewhat funny videos here and there. But it's really interesting hearing all your insights and knowledge. So that's really cool. I appreciate the time taken out of your day.
No worries.
Thanks for it.
So yeah, our YouTube channel, just Balance My Hormones YouTube channel if you want to check that out. But
EU, TRT UK.
Yeah.
And we'll also put a link to Pete's channel in this video. So subscribe to both our channels. If you like the video, please like it, and if you don't like it, you can hit dislike.
Yeah.
But we'll be at like.
Yeah, and subscribe. Yeah.
Don't forget, check out the description. Click on the subscribe button, both our channels, get your levels tested, and I'm glad that making friends in the TRT community. I think we all need to stick together.
I agree.
It's a very serious thing, and I think it's starting to come to light, and I hope it becomes more mainstream, and that stigma of scary testosterone slowly goes away over time.
I think it'll happen if we all work together, all of us in the field, rather than fighting each other, that we all come to consensus that all we're trying to do is help men and women have access to these hormones when they've been denied before.
I think with all the birth control and SSRIs floating around in the water, I think there's going to be plenty of TRT patients for everyone.
Yeah, I think so.
Exactly.
All right, well, thanks.
Pete.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Have a good one.
All right, see ya.